Former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy joins us now. Vivek, what's going to happen Thursday?
Well, the reality is the Democrats have set the expectations rock bottom low. Keep in mind, back in 2012, when Obama showed up in that first debate versus Romney, it was the other way around. Expectations were high and Obama bombed. So they've tried to set up Biden as well as they possibly can. A 3-on-1 debate versus Trump that includes the two CNN moderators, with expectations set rock bottom and no live audience. If Biden still fails in that circumstance, I think he is done as the candidate. But they've tried their best to set themselves up for a win-win. Yet my best advice to President Trump is just be yourself. The American people are sick of being fooled by the media. They're going to see through the media's tricks. Just tell the people what your record was, compare that to Biden's, and I think that President Trump, nonetheless, despite the way they've set this up, is still going to be able to succeed in a big way.
So you think the Democrats are winning the expectations game? In collusion with the media, they are winning the expectations game, and they've rigged it to win.
They've rigged it in every single sense of the word. It's CNN moderating the debate in their home turf with no live audience. This would be like the equivalent of hosting the debate in Mississippi with Donald Trump hosted by Fox News with the 3,000-person audience. And yet I respect Donald Trump for agreeing to those terms anyway, because the fact of the matter is this is a debate that the American people deserve to see on fair terms. Does that mean it's going to be fair? Of course it's not. But I think President Trump is ready to show the people who he really is. And one thing I think I'd like to see come across, and I think will come across, Jesse, is that Donald Trump can actually be the president who unites this country. Joe Biden ran on a message of national unity. He has failed miserably. Trump's approach to unity is different. Success is unifying. Excellence is unifying. And the excellence of that record of a growing economy, a sealed southern border, global stability, that is excellence. And that's how he's going to unite the country, not just through rhetoric, but through action. And I think that will come across in a way that Americans, you know what, you got to give the voters more credit than sometimes the pundits give them. They're going to be able to see through the shenanigans that CNN and their moderators put up. And that's why I'm optimistic that despite the traps they've laid, Trump can still come out stronger for it.
What about Hillary's advice? I mean, if Hillary's advice is true and these are going to be the game plans, he's just going to talk about January 6th for 90 minutes. He's going to call him a convicted felon, a bankrupt bozo that's going to bring more chaos and racism to the country. And Trump's not going to be able to talk. He's going to have to hold his breath, compose himself, because his mic's going to be muted, and then he's going to have to fire back. If he's firing back at all these hoaxes and smears the whole time, is he not getting his unifying message across on policy?
Of course, that's what they're going to try to stop him from doing, Jesse. And I think President Trump is experienced at this point. He's led this country against the backdrop of an impeachment hoax, a Trump-Russia collusion hoax. So I think he's set up to do well here. But if I was giving advice to Joe Biden, here's what it would be, is don't take Hillary Clinton's advice, because she is conflicted as an advisor. Remember, if Biden bombs, there's a lot of people waiting in line, salivating for that DNC nomination. No doubt Hillary Clinton's one of them. So when you have an advisor who has a bit of a personal conflict of interest, you might want to think twice before you follow their advice.
Does Obama have a conflict? Because he's now firing and hiring people inside Wilmington. Did you have any idea how deeply wired he is into the Biden campaign? I don't even think Biden knows who's in charge.
Yeah, well, the reality is Biden's cognitive deficits, Jesse, they are not a bug to the people who control him. They're a feature because it allows him to serve as a puppet for the managerial class. So that's one of the things that's made him sufficiently appealing to that managerial class, is it was enough to barely get the job done while still advancing their actual deep state and managerial class interests. Now that that puppet has completely lost the battery's completely almost brain dead, now they may be prepared to move him to one side, but this debate's the final hoop that they're making him jump through. So regardless of the matter, I think President Trump is going to succeed by focusing less on that managerial machine, less on the Democrats, less on Biden, and more on his vision for this country, which I think will reunite this nation at a time when we need it. And that's why I'm rooting for him.
All right. Well, if Steven Spielberg can't get him through one last hoop, I don't know who can. Vivek, we'll see you in the spin room. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.